Cool. So, well, thanks for joining, everybody. I'm super happy to be invited on this live draw for Procreate today. So, thank you very much, Georgie, for inviting me. Georgie is in the background. She's going to be looking at your questions in the chat room, and she'll tell me, and I'll answer them as I go. So. Today I'm going to show you a little process that I use to draw these kind of sketches that you see on the screen. So I find these little sketches super useful at the beginning of a project for all sorts of designs exploration. I think it's really nice to get started before going into a final product and spend a lot of time. So basically, they are fairly loose, and they're relatively fast to draw. And the main idea here is really to try a lot of shapes, to combine them, to try different things, to see what works and what doesn't. And it's basically a way of thinking on paper, throwing out your ideas, and not to be too precious about it. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. You pick different ones, and yeah. So I'm going to show you real quick before I start to do one from scratch. I'm going to show you real quick a little breakdown of one of them, and show you how I go about these. So let me unhide these. Right. So basically, when I start, I'm going to put that there. So I start with a first step, which is very loose. It's really like big gesture strokes. Sometimes I use a large brush that creates kind of values immediately. Sometimes I just like a large charcoal to kind of put these kind of volumes together. And then immediately after that, just for 3-4 minutes, 5 minutes or something like that. And after that, I kind of refine these shapes. So once I've decided of the gesture and the proportions, I kind of look at some references or think back to what I've studied before, and start to play with some ideas. Once I'm happy with that, I start to refine those shapes I've committed to. And so here I spend a little bit more time, but basically it's pretty safe because the hard work of perspective and gestures is already done. So it's kind of even kind of fun to get there. It's just like refining and adding a lot of little details and a little bit of splash of light to really help define the volume and a bit of materials. And at the end, I'll put a little splash of color. Now, the good thing about that is that you can, in this process, I can really put a lot of different things really quickly, try variations, right? So here we have, this kind of either this kind of red or dirty, grimy texture, or dark purple, and I can, put some the decals, can put them on or off, or add different type of variations, and then you can put some black decals instead and put them underneath or on top, and you can do all sorts of variations. And this is quite interesting when you are researching some designs, because then you can do this kind of character sheets for your director or director to look at, and you can see all sorts of variations. And yeah, it's I find this process quite useful, because once you've done the hard work of creating the design and the perspective and make it look nice, then it's a breeze to create this kind of variations in colors and materials and all sorts. So yeah, so without further ado, I'm gonna get started and do one right away. So usually I start with a canvas about 4,000 by 5,000 pixels. I mean, it's plenty to work and to do a lot of different ones. And what I do first, I put my background roughly at a mid-gray, just first because it's less blinding, and as you've seen just before, I'm going to add some splash of white to make the shape stick out. So having a neutral background is kind of nice. So I've got different kind of charcoals that I've created. We'll probably look at them in detail a bit later on. But I like to start with one that is almost like between a charcoal and a brush pen. So it does this kind of things. So yeah, let's start. So we're going to do maybe some sort of. We're going to stay in the sci-fi vibe, really. So I'm going to do this kind of alien shape or droids or these kind of things. And as I start, I really at the beginning, I'm not precious about how it looks, and really I'm looking for big volumes. So here I'm looking down this kind of, maybe that's going to be the head shape. So at the moment it's kind of a cylindrical. So here I've just used a quick shape. I'm going to come down to this because I use quick shapes quite a bit in this process because I find them really quite fast, and they are very useful to define geometrical shapes. So I don't know if you're familiar with them, but the way they work is basically if I just draw a circle, then I hold and a quick shape will kick in. And you see at the top here of the screen you have edit shape, so I can press that and edit those shapes, and you have a lot of controls, and it's a very elegant interface because I just discovered yesterday that you have different behaviors if you drag and drop on the line or on the control or on the outside of these shapes, and then you can place them and try even in live different feature for designs. The quick shapes are not doing only ellipses. You can do arcs as well. So here I've got an arc. Same thing. I can edit. Well, it created an ellipse here, but I can edit this shape. Let's do a proper arc. Right. And with an arc, if I press in the line itself, it will just do this kind of angle rotation, and on the controls, it will move the handle points. And you can also do like geometric shapes, right? Like polygons, right? Same thing. And you can do also like straight lines, and it will keep them. I find it very elegant and very nice. So yeah, you'll see me use them quite a bit. I've triggered my quick shape to be very fast, and we'll look at the preference a bit later on. So yeah, so let's continue blocking this guy in. So I've got this the head, the shoulder, maybe a bit of an arm here. I'm going to put a bit of a chest piece. So I'm going to try to do this kind of big volume here. And this guy is almost looking like he's looking straight in profile. So I'm going to place his face here. Maybe it's going to be a bit more interesting to look at. A bit of a eye line there. So again, this is very loose, just to display a bit of a gesture, of a sense of volume, and see how that goes. I'm going to do a few of those, so it's kind of useful for a bit of a warm up, and also, as I said before, to feel less precious about them. So you try a few, and you can ditch some or combine those. And so I'm going to put that on my page somewhere. There you go. Right. I'm going to do another one. Let me just try something a bit more like insect shapes, and maybe a form of. Let's see. I'm going to start with a little sphere here. So you see I'm combining like a circle and an arc to create this kind of nice spheres. And I'm going to decide of an angle from my perspective, kind of thing. There you go. Hi Vanessa. So no, I do not sell my brushes. I've not even started or think about it yet. So yeah, well, this is a good idea. I'm probably going to create a little pack. I'll put them for free in Gumroad. So I'll put this little pack. I'll go through these brushes later on, and I'll put them for free on Gumroad. And well, you know, they have a nice system of of freebies and donations over there. So yeah, I'll definitely put them all there. Spend a little bit of time defining them, and I'm quite happy with those. I'll go a bit later. Once I've locked in a couple of guys, I'll go and describe them and show how they work. So here I'm kind of going for a insectoid kind of shape. I like using nature as a reference. I mean, there is so many crazy animals out there. I've put a little. I'm gonna try to do this multitasking thing. There you go. So I've put a little boards together in Pinterest here. And this is kind of the references that I like to use. So you see here we have this kind of locust shape at the top, and it's always nice. Oh really? Oh, that's better. Okay, I've not changed anything. Cool. Right. And so yeah, so this is kind of references that I use. I mean, between these insects and all these shapes. I mean, there is so much inspiration out there. It's all these crazy guys. Really some beautiful stuff. So anyway, so I'm gonna go for this kind of insectoid shape for this second one I'm drawing now. Let's go back at it. So you see, I looked at this picture earlier, so I kind of remembered those volumes. Right. So I've got this guy here. Let's give him a little bit of a shoulder pad here. There you go. Maybe top of the head. Things like that. And yeah, so I'm not going to spend too much time in adding details right there. I just want to see the kind of volumes that are going to work and the kind of stance. And as I start to commit to some of these volumes, I remove some of the things that are getting in the way. So, because I can picture it in my head clearly, and I want to make sure that this is reflecting nicely on the page. Right. And then quite quickly as well, I use one of this charcoal brush. It's very loose, very large, and I place some very loose shades. So you see that brush is doing a lot of work for me because it's a gradient brush, and so I don't have to worry about putting some gradients. So in one stroke, I really kind of define some volumes, and I find that I like to be super lazy in a smart way, if I can say that. I think it's a good thing to try to do in general. When you find a solution to something that really does a lot of hard work for you, I think, because these are supposed to be quite quick, the most time you can gain, the better. So I've put some large strokes there, and it's a bit like clay sculpting with these large strokes. You put quite a few big lumps, and then you proceed by subtraction to continue defining your volumes. So here I've put those big lumps there, and I can use the same brush but as an eraser. And there I can continue defining. So not only it's defining these kind of volumes that I am after, it's also starting to design my the lighting I'm going to use, right? So I'm going to undo this a little bit. There you go. So that's cool. Let's try to do another one. right? So again, I do quite a few of these, so that's, you know, then I don't feel precious about them. I'm gonna happily ditch them or combine them. Go back to this little charcoal brush thing. All right. We'll do another dude. Same thing here. So just big strokes and just try to find out what are the main big volumes, and then later on I'm going to kind of, I should have created new layers here. So with 3 fingers drag down this little volume pop in, I cut and paste, so now I've got a new layer there. There you go. Oops. Yes, I just want to make sure that I have this kind of nice big volume sorted out, right? And then after that, we're going to go again, like with sculpting with clay. You create some big volumes first, big lumps. Make sure you're happy with those proportions, and then we refine them. We go in there and just refine them. So this one, yeah, maybe it's got a sort of a hoodie there. And it's got maybe some sort of antenna type thing. And this is just really playful, you know. You try things. You set off with the rough direction, you know you're going to go doing, okay, I'm going to do some sci-fi. I'm going to do a bit of a robot thing, some droids probably, and I know that I want to be inspired by this kind of insectoid shapes, because you know you have some really cool things to look, and the exoskeleton are really cool to look at and get inspiration from. And yeah, you take these kind of proportions and start to use them. Right, so I think for the sake of this demo, we're gonna look at this page and start to look at what we've got here. I think, yeah, this last one, you know, with a little bit of warm up, I think this last one will be interesting. We've got a little bit of this locust shape. See, if I add an eye here, you can recognize the dude. Probably do something different there. So yeah, let's keep this. We're gonna work on this guy. So I'm gonna ditch those. I'm gonna keep this guy. Cool. And from there, so now, as I said before, you have this big shape. It's a bit messy, and that's fine. And we're now going to commit to those volumes, and we're going to make sure that they are respecting a nice, a decent perspective. And we're going to basically do a lot of cleanup. So what I like with this little process is every step is very forgiving. So at the beginning you start very loose, and that's fine. And it's pretty much those 2 first steps. There where all the thinking is happening, but you don't have to mix thinking and the rendering, you know, and making sure that it looks good. And I think to make sure that you separate those 2 phases is very important. Again, because you have much less pressure and you spend much less energy, and you keep very clear to what is it you're doing at the time. So here, in these first 2 steps, I'm defining. You know, you're basically designing. This is the 2 most important steps. This is where it can be quite exhausting, where all the thinking is going on, and this is where the pressure is. And once you're done cleaning this guy up, the rest will be pretty much fun, because your foundations are strong. You would have make sure that your volumes are very clear, and that we can very clearly see what's going on. And this is what I'm doing now. And you know that your anatomy or perspective is working nicely. And so everything is already on the page. So the rest will be just pure fun, right? So this, if there was, you know, a moment of hardship, really, where there is a lot of thinking, this is these 2 first steps that I'm doing now. You know, this loose first research, and now the commitment to those different shapes.
So yeah, I just did a little quick gesture here to flip. I'm going to do that quite a lot. I hope it's not too disturbing, give you too motion sickness or something. And to do that, I press on this little, I'm going to do this, this little button here. So I press and hold on this, and I've set up a gesture. When I tap with my finger, you have this menu appearing. And we see that flip horizontally is there, right? Oh, didn't know. Wow, learning everywhere. You can hold, drop, and decide. Brilliant. This app is it's gifts that keeps on giving. So basically, now I know that flip horizontally is at my 2 o'clock roughly. So if I just press and hold and do a gesture on towards 2 o'clock, I don't even have to press. I just press and slide, and it's super fast. And now I just learned that actually we can set up all sorts of action. Brilliant, cool. Right. So I use this kind of flip. It's very important to see. It gives you a great a new vision to your page, and this is something that we are very lucky to have in the visual arts. The way the brain works is you look at your drawing for ages in one angle, and if you mirror it to the other side, suddenly your brain picks it up as something new, and you can have a fresh view on it, and you see all sorts of distortions and things to correct, and this is super useful. If you take musicians, for example, they work on a music piece or on a composition, and they don't have that luxury. At some point, you have your ears full of your music, and it takes a lot of time for them to refresh and have a fresh ear. And I'm super happy that in the brain for everything visual works that way, like just as fast as a flip, and you can see a picture in a completely new different way. So these little shortcuts are quite useful. Right, so I'm going to continue cleaning this guy. So let's do this shoulder bit here. It's all right. So again, as I clean, not only I remove what's not necessary, but you see it's almost start to create almost a little bit of lighting. Right, this one is blending here, and I'm going to add a little bit of shade there, and that's cool. That helps sell the volumes, right? I don't really like this shape here. It looks like a sausage or something. This is not. Let's do something here. Let's have a quick look at our references. Let's look at this insect guy. Let's see how it's made. So I drag and drop this icon there, and you're probably familiar with that. And now we have the dual screen mode. It's very useful. Yeah, let's look at this dude. Let's see what we have there. How this kind of mandibles. So yeah, we have some nice areas underneath the head where you have a bit more complexity with all these little mandibles and stuff. And the contrasts very nicely with the big shapes. So okay, that's cool. We're going to do something similar with some sort of plated. So yeah, we have our big shapes. Oops, we have our big shapes here, and here, and here. And now we're going to add some medium shapes to start to contrast, to have a nice balance of design, so that it's pleasing to the eye. It creates a nice visual rhythm. So you want to have like kind of a three levels of proportions. You have like very big shapes that creates a nice strong rhythm in the page, and then you want to have medium shapes that are kind of serving those big shapes and helping them to stand out. And then you have a third level with tiny details, which we'll get to it in the next step. And this helps to serve the medium details. And altogether, they should strengthen the whole piece. Right. So we are trying to do this little mandibles thing. Let's see how that works. We could add a little blade here. Let's do that. Something like that. Let's say that we have little things there. So how are we looking on questions, Georgie? Cool. Don't hesitate to put your questions in if you have anything so far that was not clear or that you'd like to know. So right, so I'm continuing to define this thing. I'm going to unzoom a little bit, so it's a bit more pleasant to look at. Right. So this thing, I still have not designed this mandible bit. Let's do something like that. Maybe there's something that stick out, so that it's going to be interesting for the silhouette. Yeah, maybe this is longer. Like that. It's going to also be cool to sell our little perspective going on here. Let's make sure that, yeah, that should. I'm just checking the angles. Yeah, that should be okay. This is a little bit low, a bit high. There you go. Okay, I'm gonna try to accelerate a little bit. Oh no. Is it? Am I still out? Can you hear me? Okay, good. I'm not sure. Maybe it's this microphone. I think it's not a very good one. But just got it for this stream. I don't have a professional sound gear, but I hope it's not. Maybe it's got a sort of noise cancelling technology that they're using that works a bit better, so sound might drop out when I'm not talking. Right, cool. So I'm going to pick up the pace here, but yeah. So how are you doing on time? So you can do on these actions there. You go to Canvas, Canvas information. Okay, 21 minutes, including a lot of talking and blah blah and stuff. That's all right. That's all right. That's not bad. Usually at this stage, you would look at being at about 10 minutes, 10, 15 minutes, and you could fill a page with, I would still stick to do 2, 3, or 4 of those, because if you want to show that to your team or to your art director, if you have quite a few like that, lined up with different shapes, then again, it's very useful so that you're not precious about them, and you can cannibalize them, combine them, and be very flexible with them. But also, if you have a character sheet like that, with people who are going to look at it, they will see an intention, right? Because they will see the common point between the 2 or 3 of them that you would have there. And that's very important, right? Say you have one that is there, and another one that is, say, like that, and another one that is like different, and they're going to look and they're going to see very quickly where you're going. So having several on the same page, it helps showing your intention, and that's also very important. So cool. A couple of questions. Yeah. So yeah, the question was what's my inspiration in drawing, and why am I using insects as references? So basically, I love everything that is sci-fi because I'm just like a kid. It's like it's just playing with creating new worlds, and in science fiction and fantasy you have. Basically, everything's possible. Everything can fly, and you have plenty of cool gadgets and robots and stuff. And then when it comes to inspiration with insects, it's not only insects, but I love all these amazing amazing shapes, right? I mean, you have, let's go back there. This is to me, this is sci-fi, right? This is what Mother Nature came up with in millions of years. I mean, look at these crazy dudes. I mean, instead of, you know, when you look, you look for inspiration, you look at some refreshing new shapes, and well, you have plenty of them that has been created millions of years ago. I mean, it's not only insects. Look at these birds. I mean, check out these eyelashes. This is, and the thing. I mean, you could clearly get that inspired to do your. Maybe actually I'm going to look at this neck. Our character will have a bit of a soft neck. So it's not just insects. Look at this dude. It's just they are fascinating. It's just mesmerizing shapes. And why would you try to create something, you know, obviously at any rate your inspiration and your imagination is, whether you like it or not, a combination of everything you've seen and everything that has impressed you one way or another. So if you can art direct that and sculpt your visual references by educating yourself and looking at a lot of things and fish and nature and then this is I mean this is the best thing you can do as a form of training, and you should do it all the time. And I see a lot sometimes on the forums and stuff, people saying, well, and I drew this without references and stuff. And okay, that's all well and fine, and it does show a nice strength of, you know, that you have learned a lot of anatomy and you have picked up a lot of references. But I'll be a bit cautious about making it a competition, you know. It's not a goal in itself to be able to draw without a reference. I think all the best artists, from the classical artists, Rembrandt and Da Vinci and all the best artists of today, and you can see them, their tutorials today, they use references constantly, right? It's super important that studying references and gathering references before you do a project should be, you should quote it as a freelancer, you should quote the time you spend in research, because it is part of the thinking, right? So I think it's more than fine to use references. I think it's a very good thing, and you should do it as much as possible. And yeah, of course, you're going to pick up some reflexes, and you're going to need, maybe when you're going to draw some sort of stuff, sometimes you won't need references, but I would still recommend to go for references anyway, because you will see something new every time you study them. So I hope I answer your questions. So it's not only insects, but yeah, I do love the insects, and they are completely alien. All right, so I'm going to try to pick up the speed here, because it would be good to move on a little bit, to get something a bit sexy on the page. Right, so we're starting to get something there. This is a little shenanigan we don't need. Started to. I'm trying to be conscious not to push pixels, because at some point, you know, drawing can become super therapeutic and get into a form of trance. And this is kind of, at some point you realize that you've been pushing pixels, you know, in the tiny, you're completely zoomed in, and you're pushing pixels and refining, and half an hour later, you realize you've been really doing this area really well, and it's just because you were just caught into sort of new other dimension. So it's I'm trying to be careful to constantly remind myself of what I'm trying to do at the time. So I know that right now I'm cleaning up those volumes, and I want to make sure that they are readable and that they work nicely. So I'm getting somewhere here. Well, we're going to clean up. This is a bit. We're going to continue cleaning up anyway, but I think we're starting to get a nice thing. This is still a bit messier on the neck here. I'm going to swipe that. So once I've done that, I'm gonna explain a little bit about these brushes I'm using. Just after that, just making sure that this is there, because once this phase is done, basically the hardest part of the job is complete. So the brushes I'm using, they have a gradient feature, right? And I'll show you how I've made that. But you see, so they are giving me a lot for free, you know, all these gradients, and that's really cool. And so not only they have a gradient, but they are also based on the pencil's orientation. So for example, I'm going to take a sharper one here. So you see here the brush that I'm going to size, it's very narrow, it's like almost like a knife, like a very thin bezel. So if I hold my brush vertically, it does something very thin and hard. And if I brush horizontally, I've got the thin end of it. So it's kind of a beveled, I can't remember how you call those. So there you go. So and that's you have to train a little bit how to use that, because it's you have to move your wrist quite a bit, and it forces you to take your pencil in a different way so that you can really do these kind of various shapes. But you can define volumes very very quickly with this form of charcoal. And I think when you use a charcoal block, you won't have an even. I'm going to show you another one here. You won't have an even. It's going to be quite hard to have an even stroke like that. You're most likely to press a bit more on one end than the other, on one corner than the other. So you will have this kind of gradient, even if it's a kind of an accident, and you can learn to master it. So with this brush, it just give me that for free. So I'm going to use these gradients now to define these volumes, and we're going to see that I'm going to move to a slightly harder one here. And as I remove some of this paint from this area, we can see that now my guy is getting mixed and blended with the background, and that's fine, because we're just about to use that to our advantage. Because I'm going to create a new layer. I'm going to drop a little bit of I'm going to reduce this guy a little bit, and I'm going to do a little bit of a background. See, if you've seen the previous one I've made before, I always have a little bit of a brush strokes, a few loose brush strokes behind, and they help selling the shape, and it helps the form to stick out. You know, even if it's using white or hard black. So this is what I'm going to do now. You know, even sometimes just a tiny little highlight, it makes your little shape pop out. All these shapes pop out. So yeah, you see, one of those can be messy. It's fine. We can spend more time later to make it look cool and stuff. So I'm gonna place this guy here, and I'm gonna go to this new layer I've created. Underneath, can be underneath or on top, it's fine. And I'm gonna take the smooth one here, and I'm gonna go really just totally on top of it again. You know, just nothing. Don't want to have anything where you have to be cautious. I like if I can make a step where you don't have to be cautious, it's all the better, because it's easier to do. And well, we have something there. I mean, it could be anything really. Let's just for the sake of this demo, we'll see that. That's fine. And you can either erase it around your guy's shape, but I prefer to use a non-destructive method, and in Procreate you can create masks. So I click on that layer and I select mask here. Right? So here now I've got a mask, and if I paint with a black color on a white mask, it will create transparency. So basically I can remove that background by drawing that mask. Right. So I'm going to go very loosely. We'll refine it as we go, because the silhouette of the shape might change, and so we'll adjust that that background as we go if the silhouette changes. So here we have these two things sticking out. So now it's going to be looking pretty cool on this black background. It's going to help the silhouette stand out as well. Maybe we have other ones sticking out, and this is pretty good to help you make design decisions as well, because it reveals volumes and it makes you see what works, what doesn't. Right, I need some more there. Maybe we have a plated stuff. I'm going to flip the layer. Cool. Couple more questions. Okay, so a couple more questions here. So do I still use pencils and paper, and do I prefer digital tools or traditional tools? Well, I do. I always have. I've got plenty of sketchbooks, and I try to always have one on me. I try to always have a few pencils on me, and because I like to draw every time I can. But now I also have my iPad with me at all times, and I would favor drawing on. I mean, I don't have any preferences, but for example, if I'm in a bus or so on, it's quite nice to draw on the iPad because you can paint, you can go straight into even photographic manipulation, use texture and references. You have a whole computer with you, basically, with very, very smart and powerful tools. You can use all these quick shapes, and that's really nice. But nonetheless, I also always have a normal sketchbook, because sometimes you just want to doodle, or you want to sketch something you see in the street, and it's sometimes a bit more convenient to have just a simple paper, or you want to put that on the table, you want to explain something, and sometimes, or to take a note or something, and to do a bit of drawings. It's also very nice to have a sketchbook. And out of principle, I want to have a sketchbook with me, and I want to have a pen. I want to be able to draw. I mean, imagine, you work 2 hours or 3 or 5 on your iPad, or you forgot to charge it and it's out. I don't want that to be the reason why I'm not going to be able to draw. So I will have also a sketchbook. So yeah, so no preferences really. I think I'm mostly using Procreate to do this kind of work. The one that I'm doing now, which is basically research. Trying to figure out designs, so it's basically helping me thinking visually. So I want to have either a sketchbook or Procreate with me to do these kind of tasks. So okay, so here it's messy on these mandibles. Can't understand what's going on, so I'm going to clear that. Yeah, I think we have this guy here. I'm gonna use some dark values here to make sure that we understand this is behind it, and to make sure that these guys, no, that's good, and to make sure that these guys are in front. Shouldn't be quite zoomed in, it's a bad habit. Right, so now that I have this background, I'm removing more and more. That's a little bit better. We still don't understand what's going on. Remove this guy. Yeah, because this guy is going up, so I need to. Yeah. Yeah, see here. So this is the important bit when you're checking your volumes, making sure that it does make sense. Yeah, so I'm going to edit this background as well. So I'm going to paint in the mask. I'm going to paint in white this time to reveal the background here, now that I have removed some shapes. Right, probably going to have to paint back in black. It's a bit fiddly but this is the important bit, because after that it's going to be just pure fun. But I want to make sure that we have a good readability here, and yeah, that it's much clearer now. So by cleaning this background as well, I can create this kind of cool little outlines. Right, so things are a bit more cleaner here in this throat area. So we don't seem to have placed an eye there. So let's go and design this head. Cool. Let's do that, that's nice. So now I'm kind of I've seamlessly moved into this third phase. You see, I'm going to go back to this when I explained you those steps earlier. So I was doing quite a bit of that phase 2 here, So this is the first, and then this is phase 2 here. So I was cleaning and make sure my design were clean, and then I seamlessly transitioned to this phase, where now we're going to define and make sure that all these shapes are nice and sharp, and we're going to add this kind of nice and white layer. I'm going to show you in this one. I'm going to remove the colors, right? So that's pretty much the same. So at the moment, I'm roughly at this stage in the other drawing, and now I'm going to add this kind of highlights, and this is going to really help sell the drawing. It makes it look super cool, and it makes the thing really pop out of the page. But it's also very functional, because it really helps defining the overall volumes and designs, right? Also notice that compared to the others, it's quite the darks of this guy. Maybe I could duplicate it, see if I want to have darker shapes or not. Let's not do that for now. Let's see how we go. Let's put our background a bit quieter. Right. Cool. So I'm going to add this this white layer. So I put this white layer. So here, if we have let's call it paint or dark, whatever. Let's call it dark. Yeah. Let's call it rename light. Simple names, and let's get a bit of cleaning up, because we're going to start to add more layers. So we want that to be a bit clear. So I put my light layer underneath the dark one. So basically, the main reason is, again, it's because I'm a bit lazy, and now that I've got my dark layer, I can do these kind of big strokes, and the black is revealed on top. So the reason this is happening is because if you look at what we've been doing so far, I have been painting in black, and I've been removing with the eraser. I've not been painting in values. Every single time I've used here, every single time on this layer, every single time I've used my brush, I was always painting full black. But it was because I was using transparency in my brush, and my brush contains the gradients. So I didn't have to use or pick any gray values, right, like that. So basically, if I change my background color, you see that everything, that's really blinding, sorry about that. You see that everything is transparent on this layer. And let's undo this. There we go. And now we can use this to our advantage. I'm going to clear this white layer again. Now we can use this to our advantage, so that I do, say, a big white stroke across this guy. See? So if I do slower here, and gently, these are little gradients. Now these start to pick up, and I don't have to worry about details, because I've already done this job about worrying about details. So now that I'm adding some light, the fun begins, because the hard work has been done before. So I can just paint like that, and I don't have to be careful anymore. I've already spent that effort and energy defining and designing, and it's a little bit tedious, but you know, that's the design work. You have to go, and we're going to continue refining them as we go. But now I can go underneath and just enjoy watching that light evolve. And as I'm going to do so, this kind of stroke there, I can continue still using these quick shapes. So as I'm going to be adding this white. I'm going to progressively remove. So I keep moving that screen. I hope it's not too disturbing for you guys. I promised myself to try to keep still, but completely forgot about it. So yeah, so now that I have some white there, I'm going to go to my paint layer, and here's another tip. I can press and hold on the white, on the dark layer, somewhere where there is some dark paint. And as I press and hold, you can see all the layers that I've been touching. So if I press and hold here, so I'm going to select, press here, we have only the mask. And here we have the dark layer, and sometimes you will see all the layers basically where your finger is pointing at. Procreate will go through all the layers that your finger touched when you hold, and it's going to display them. So you can really quickly go from one layer to another. So I'm going to use the eraser to start defining this shape here. So continue cleaning up. And I wanted to erase those lines here. So now that we have the white, we don't need that black here around here. So just cleaning this area a little bit so that we remove what we don't need, right? So I'm going to try to keep as simple as possible all the way and remove everything we don't need. And this is going to help us a lot defining this. So already this is getting more painterly and less like a sketch, right? Less like a drawing, like a line drawing. So because we have defined those brightness volumes, there we go. Now it's starting to be. So every step helps every previous step helps the next one, right? So now that I've put some light for my volumes, it's much easier to add some more details and to build up on this, right? So I'm going to show you, because I showed that tip about the layer select. I'm not sure if it's on by default. I'm going to go into the gestures now, and into the preference gestures, and we're going to have a look at all the shortcuts I've set up for my little process here. So if you go to the little settings icon here, and you go to preference there, and all the way at the bottom here you have gesture control, so you press on that, and then you have all your shortcuts. So for smudge and erase, I've left it all off. I'm not using any shortcuts to go through them. Assisted drawing, we're not talking about this today. This is when you do some. It's yet another super powerful tool to draw perspectives and stuff. I invite you to look at tutorials about it. It's really cool. But we're not using that for these kind of sketches. So I mean, we could, but we're not today, at least. So it's all off. The eyedropper, I only have it on when I press the little square icon. So the square icon is you know, right? It's let's draw. It's this little guy here, right? So let's go back to preference, gesture control. So the eyedropper is this square button plus a touch of the Apple Pencil. So that will trigger our little, if I'm a brush, so it's going to trigger our little, and if I drag, this is the eyedropper, which you probably know really well. Gesture control, and then quick shape. So this I've changed a little thing. So quick shape, when you draw and hold, this is the setting by default. I think by default it's around I can't remember, 0.5, 0.6, or 0.4, 0.3, whatever. It's a bit long, so see what you prefer as you go. I've made mine like kind of a hair trigger. So I feel like about 0.2, 0.1, is it 0.2? Something like that, whatever. Yeah, that quite fast. So it does trigger sometimes when I don't expect it, but that's fine, you can undo that really quickly. Quick menu, this is what we've seen before, so I've set it up to the square icon plus a touch. So touch means the touch of the finger, this is described underneath. Full screen is off. Clear layer, it's scrub. Well, I use the clean, the scrubbing I always find is a bit finicky, or maybe it's my fingers, they don't work properly. But I use the clear layer, which is part of the quick menu. It's just one button, and you swipe. Sorry, one button, and you swipe at your 8 o'clock. So I'm not doing a clear layer here. Well, I could actually clear layer, and there you go. All the black is gone. And then undo. And let's finish with this shortcuts. So full screen now. Clear layer, not using it. I could actually disable that. Copy and paste. So that I'm using it here and there. So a 3-finger swipe is quite useful. I think you can do it from the quick menu as well. There we go. And layer select. So this is what we were talking about. The default delay I think is 30 seconds for everything. Yeah. So layer select, touch and hold. And so when you touch and hold in the location where you touched and hold, it will go in depth through all the layers, and it's going to fire this ray through all these layers and see if it hit any pixels of layers, be it a mask or be it a normal layer, and it will display in this very nice little list, and you can choose very quickly the layer you want to work on. So that's quite nice, you don't have to go through these menus all the time. And in general, I've disabled touch actions because I don't want my fingers to be doing anything else than these shortcuts, because I'm using the pencil, so the pencil is doing everything. And rotate, pitch, and zoom. That's fine. And I've not disabled undo and redo. Although sometimes with my palm I do trigger and undo. I don't find it annoying enough, or it's quite rare. So I really like having this quick undo with these gestures. So there you go. So this is for the shortcuts and all the gesture controls. And while we are doing all this kind of explanation, so that it's going to sit at the same place in this video, let's look at this brush. I promised you that we looked at this brush. I'm going to create a new layer here. And so the way it's done, we have a brush. Let's look at the source first. I've created that source. So the source is a bit peculiar. And maybe it's something I have not picked up. I'll have to talk with the Procreate team guys. But to make sure that my charcoal edge, I'm going to paint here to explain. So this is my pencil, right? Okay, I'm going to do that. It's really quick. Thank you for the quick shapes. That's very useful. I'm going to edit that. This is a bit overkill, but whatever, why not? And this is my screen. There you go. So I don't have a camera filming my hands, so I have to draw it for you. And so let's pretend that this is the area of your brush size, right? And what you see here, the shape source there, it stops at the middle. I had to create it to make it half the way, because I want, when I'm using this, all right, finally sans was out. So I want the brush size. I want when I draw to have the top of my brush really flush with the nib. So whatever brush size I use, when I scale my brush size, you see the center stays at the same, and if I change my brush size, it's going to grow in that direction. And I find that very so if I do a stroke, it's going to go like that, right? And that's pretty much for me, it's simulating. If I had a charcoal, that would be the end of my charcoal, and this is the bit that I would place on the page. So I would know with my charcoal roughly where to look at, or I could guess where it's going to paint, because the tip of the pencil is going to be, I can take a very fast brush, and I know when I do that stroke, basically, my pencil was here, right? And that's very important because, or I find it very important because here, if I want to do some details, I want to know exactly where it's going to sit, especially if I use a large brush. Let's take a sharper one, right? So you see this one is a bit thinner, and I want to know exactly where it's going to end. So I can do this kind of nice flash, and I can predict what I'm going to do. So I can guess this is the real size of the brush at my zoom level. So I know roughly how large is my brush, and I know exactly, I can predict as I draw where it's going to land. So to me, that's quite important. So these are how my brushes are set up. So you can see that they are always in the middle. The drawback to that, and that's why I'd like to have maybe a talk with the Procreate team, maybe put an option for that alignment, is that you only use half the res of your brush. So at your maximum size on a large document, well, I could have a brush twice that size, and the engine is powerful enough to do it. So because I'm using only half of the brush size, yeah, I'm losing that much pixels. So that's a little cost to it, but to me that precision here is key when I'm doing this kind of designs. So anyway, so I have one of those, and this shape source I've painted them myself. So I've got a little library here of them, so a little different brush makers. And this is the one I was just using here. And this is how I paint them. So I have plenty of different ones, and I put a little bit of chaos in there, so that it creates these little streaks on the page. And I did this gradient thing. And so the gradient you see from let me create a new layer here. Sorry if this is a bit boring. So you see this gradient going down here. That creates the gradient on the page, right? So this is how it's a grading thing. So let's go back. So we see this is the brush, and you have different resolutions depending on your iPad. The lower the resolution, I've made some very, very low resolution ones to try. See, this is 64 pixels, and they have the advantage not only to be super fast, but also, let's go all the way back where we were, but also when you scale them up like that, like let's take my soft one. So the reason this one is quite soft, and the reason why, even though it's quite a thin brush, we don't see the steps when you zoom in. It's quite nicely blended. You don't have all these steps, and the stroke spacing, it's at 9%, so it's fairly large, right? But at 9%, you don't see this kind of stepping effect. And I found that the reason for that is, let's get back to where it was. There we go. Well, whatever, that's fine. And the reason is because as I scale it, this brush is, you can see it's fairly low res, right? So it was probably 128 pixel resolution, but Procreate is going to use I think it's a big cubic algorithm to smooth out this brush, and that's why in the end, even with a big brush, you have a very homogeneous. You can see a tiny bit here, the steps. It's probably because it's bigger than it used to be. So here's another tip: when you create your brushes, play with the resolution of your brush. It might help. It might help you to remove that stepping effect. You lose a bit of sharpness to it, but for example, this brush, I want it to be quite smooth. And when I go super low resolution, you can still, let's go to there. You can still have, it's still quite sharp, right? So So a low resolution for your brush, most of the time, is going to be perfectly fine, and it's going to be super fast. And especially with heavier brush, like the smudge brushes and stuff, Procreate will have a much easier time to smudge vast amount of pixels with a brush that has a small resolution source. Right, and yeah, so for the other one, that is more like a brush pen, it's very straightforward. You'll see them as you download them, but I do both opacity and size, but opacity is not full because I want this to be quite potent, and the size of that. Anyway, so sorry about that if it was boring, if you were not interested into this, but at least this, all the tips are in the same place in the video. So there we go. So now you know about the brushes and stuff. You can, again, I'll create a Gumroad link, give them free, and you can get those for yourself. Again, because they are, oh yeah, most important thing, I forgot. I'm using the, is it here? Where is it? Is it in the dynamics? It's in the shape. Yeah, in the shape. I'm using the azimuth here. See this thing? Super important. That's there's no point having this precision. Well, if I remove the azimuth with this kind of brush, with this kind of centered brush tip, it's going to do all sort of crazy stuff. Basically, where I draw, it's drawing on the outside of my stroke, and it's really not intuitive. So this kind of brush with the starting from the middle here is really this tip is really designed for brushes that are using the pencil angle. So if my pencil is vertical, we have a straight line, and if I hold my pencil vertical but I go horizontally, it goes that way, right? As I said earlier. So the azimuth is very key. So again, you'll see when you get them. I'll put that link up during the weekend, and you'll have them really soon. But you see that it takes a little bit used to. It's a little bit of technique, and because of this gradient, you find yourself often you have to flip. So if I want to have my dark edge here, it's going to be easier because I'm right-handed. It's going to be easier to be on this side. And if I want to do another operation and have the dark on the other side, then I have to flip the screen. And you'll find that it will force you to flip your screen really often, and that's perfectly fine, because actually you should flip your screen very often, because the more you do it, the more you refresh your eye to your drawing, and that's good overall for your drawing. You don't want to draw for 2 hours a portrait or a face, and then you flip and you realize it's all distorted and skewed, and you're like, oh god, right? So it's a good check. So basically, I think, yeah, it could be a bit, it's a bit of a learning curve to use those brushes, but they're working so hard for me. They're making so much for free. What layer am I painting on? Yeah, good. That for me at least, it was worth developing them and learning how to use them. I love this kind of I think how they call beveled kind of tip, whatever. This kind of knives shapes. So here I'm adding a bit more lighting things. So I've done a lot of talking. Let's go back to painting a little bit. So we've added this white. Oh yeah, we were doing that. We're not quite finished there. I'm gonna add little highlights. So from now on, I'm gonna go through these layers and this background as well, this background mask, and I'm gonna refine, and so on and so forth. But I think we're gonna be ready to move to the next cool bit, because it's been a lot of talking there. And let's take our drawing to a new step and add a splash of color. So before I do that, just mentioning that, you see, I'm using the same principle with this white layer. It's just pure white, constantly pure white, using the transparency of the brush, and I'm not painting with values, right? Which means But now, if I create a new layer, and if I place it underneath both the dark and the light, it could be underneath the background as well, it doesn't matter. Let's rename it so that we are clear. Couleur in French. Color. There you go. Let's take a bright red, same as our little demo there. Red. Everybody likes red. And I'm going to splash, and there you go. So this is there you go. It's really, it's a bit bright. Everything is all the work is done already, right? Because it's underneath. So we have our shadows, we have our light, and we have all our detail and volume. It's all set, and let's pretend that we were happy with them. I mean, I'm skipping. You know, you could spend more time, but and now you say, okay, I'm ready. I'm going to commit and to this. I'm ready to see what it looks like in colors. So, whoa, eraser with this pencil. Sometimes double tip. I can't disable that shortcut. Keeps when you double tap on the pencil, it keeps going through. Anyway, complaining. And yeah, so now again for the same reasons, right? You have your light, you have your dark, and you have your colors. And this is something that if I remove the light and dark right there, you would see a silhouette with just the plain colors. And if you're familiar with using 3D softwares, it's basically very similar to all the different passes that you have when you do some rendering. You know, you have your speculars, you have your shadows, ambient occlusions, you have your diffuse color. So that would be your base diffuse color, or sometimes they call it albedo. And of course, I never draw without those two. But I'm just showing that basically you kind of reproducing those steps, kinda. But it's quite useful because now the color is just the color, and you can go in there, and I'm going to add maybe some white or something, and we decide that well, the white is a bit too much like the light, but let's add some another color, maybe some orange or something. Right? Yeah, why not? And here I'm going to use the quick shapes a little bit, and so you can start do some. Let's do some crazy shapes. Let's do some crazy things, and you know, but you will still read, right? So you can do let's do some crazy wiggles. Doesn't matter. This is particularly ugly, but let's use this, right? And then you're gonna smudge this, and you can start to have some pretty cool things. It looks like flames on a tuning girl. Oh God, what am I doing? Anyway, it's just showing you the principles. So yeah, you have these kind of cool things, and if you have these shapes and stuff, then you can use the liquify tool, and you can put some good shapes, and you can push this around. Oh yeah, wait a minute. Yeah, no, that's fine. And you can push this around. Yeah, there's something I haven't done yet. Let's say that I've done a good job. For the liquify tool bit, I'm going to use to have this kind of outlines as a mask, so that it doesn't go all the way. Whoa. Let's stick to red. So let's say we spend the time, I'm going to skip that quickly. We spend the time we'll do it properly in a second, but to do all the outlines really flush, because we're going to need that kind of mask later on. Right. There you go, and then the top of the head. Sorry for spinning everything in all directions. I hope I'm not going to make you sick. I do that a lot. I don't know if it's the case for everybody, but I hope it's not too painful to watch. Sorry. Well, sorry. So well, there you go. So we let's say we have our outline, and if I was to duplicate that layer, just to look at it, right, we hide everything. This is not pretty. We're going to fill that in black just to make a point. Or in white, whatever. I'm not going to see it anyway. That's brilliant. Sorry, that's not what I want to do. I'm going to first, with 2 fingers, swipe right. I've learned that new trick not long ago. Again, plenty of surprises. And it's going to basically, 2 fingers swipe right is the shortcut for, where is it? Alpha lock, right? So 2 fingers swipe right. And this is plenty. I mean, keep finding shortcuts everywhere. Oh, my 2 fingers are not working anymore. There we go. So I lock the alpha, and I'm going to fill my layer in black, so it's not confusing. So we know now that this is basically the silhouette of my guy, right? And now I'm going to use clipping masks for my color on this clipping mask. There we go. And I turn it on. So yeah, because it's dark on the transparency, it's going to be showing a little bit of black. So we could argue that, well, we could argue there's no problem for now. And then, okay, so we promise we're gonna do a better job of all this. Just showing you the process right now. And so we used liquify now, and because we have this shape as a clipping mask, and because we have our contour silhouette defined, now I can continue playing and exploring, and it's all good fun, and I can distort it to make it match. And this is just fun. This is just, and you can have plenty of happy accidents, and you're like, oh, this is interesting, and you can just keep one, duplicate it, and start another one, and add some other paintings, and okay, I want to keep this. You duplicate this one, you hide the previous one, you keep it for safekeeping, and you're like, okay, well, let's use some adjustment tools now, and then okay, let's change the hue. Let's see. Oh, brilliant! It's all pink, nice, or blue, or you can desaturate it all the way. I mean, you get the gist of it. It's just from there, it's just endless, and then you can go there and use some curves, for example. There we go. We have something a bit more like a bit more serious. So there you go. I mean, again, I'm doing a bit of a sloppy job here, but it's just to show you really quick the steps of the process, and we're gonna work a bit more carefully in a second. So this is when you want to paint. Sorry, here it is all black. I think maybe it's a good idea if I take this guy. Yeah, that's what I should do. I'm going to take the color of my background, and I'm going to fill this guy with the color of my background. So that way, there we go. When I hide the color, it's as if there was nothing there. Cool. So another super cool trick you can do with this, instead of painting, if you feel even more like trying to get more happy accidents, or if you're super lazy and you want a whole lot of job done for free, then you can just use textures. So I've set up a few textures really quick. I've not picked them up. Usually you would select them very carefully for each project, and that would be part of your time of researches. So I do have an account at textures.com. This is where, but you can use any, because I wanted this to be official. I don't want to have any problem with photographer. People say, hey, this is my picture. People are complaining easily sometimes. So this is all official. It's nice. I've got an account at textures.com, and I use them a lot to do some work. And I did a really quick selections. So here I've got some sort of destroyed painted some grungy painted materials. I think that could be cool. So let's go and use this. So we could I could either press and hold it. Does it work? Yeah, press and hold it, and then swipe up, go back to Procreate, and I still hold it. This is multitasking. Pretty cool. And then because my previous layer selected was the background, it landed right where it should be. And there you go. So we have this going on here. So that's starting to look cool already. So what you can do is take that and just do clipping mask as we just did, right? And we're gonna either distort it with warp tool. Let's do another technique for the sake of this tutorial. So you can distort it with the warp tool, and you can see in real time, like this is, I love this, because you can, it's basically, you're basically designing, you're doing a lot of ideation there. You're actually, okay, what if it looks like, oh yeah, cool. And the texture can give you, the features that are in the texture can give you a lot of cool ideas as well. Look at that, here it's all dirty. So of course my lighting, the white lighting is a bit shiny, so we're gonna adjust that in a minute, because it doesn't go well with this kind of grunge. It looks like it's been like a grungy material has been glossed. So I'm going to use the warp tool really to put that. Yeah. Oh yeah. It's now this kind of insectoid shape looks like a wasp or a bee. That's pretty cool. Yeah. And then we're going to refine that with the liquify tool. There you go. Sorry. So take these kind of shapes. Right, so now I'm just adding that for a little bit of distortions, just to make sure that there's a bit of believability with the following the volumes of these shapes. Right, this. Okay, you get the idea. I'm gonna reconstruct here a little bit. Cool. Let's move on. I'm going to pick up the pace here. So how are we doing? Canvas information. 1 hour 10. Okay, we're pretty much on time. So that's cool. Yeah. So here we go. So we have quite a lot of this white. I've been quite generous with it. So I'm going to remove some of it. So again, now each step helps defining. And refining, each new step helps refining the previous one, right? So now that I can see that I've got some colors and stuff, I see that actually I've been a bit too generous with this white and everything feels a bit too glossy. So you could spend some time to, paint it properly, and I'm kind of skipping quite quickly there. I don't want that to take too long. We'll maybe go in detail there. We have a bit of this texture here. Let's yeah, this is here. I'm going to erase some of my base area here, because I was quite sloppy doing the contour silhouette, and now I'm starting to pay the price for this. So I'm going to refine this area there. Okay, cool. And then, same thing, and we can do a bit of curves here. Yeah, appreciate. So this is like really dirty now, but so let's keep it like that for now, just to contrast it. Right. Let's pretend that we've worked it and we've painted over, because once you have that, you can either directly paint over this texture, or in order to be non-destructive, you create a new mask which you put in clipping mask as well. Why not? And then you can start to paint over. So that here I'm using the color picker and to paint over, this kind of mask, or to smudge them. And this you might want to do that to kind of, yeah, here, I'm going to go back to this. You might want to do that to kind of get a painterly effect back, if you don't want to have this kind of photographic feel to it. There's something called, homogeneity of details. I think it's called like that, or at least it's what it means. It's like you don't want to have areas of your painting which are very loose, and some other places which are super sharp with details. And to glue all this together, it's nice to try to go over it and paint a little bit and make sure that it's all roughly at the same level. Otherwise, it's going to stick out like a sore thumb, and you're going to be like, either you want everything to be really detailed, or everything to be kind of painterly. So you want that to be quite homogeneous. So let's pretend that I've done all this kind of painting job like I'm doing now, and then you can refine which areas are painted or not. And I mean, this is where you can spend ages having a lot of fun doing all sorts of variations. But let's continue adding more textures. So right, we've got, let's erase that a little bit here. Because now that you have this guy, nothing stops you from creating, let's merge those two, from creating a mask and from revealing the one that we were doing before. And nothing stops you to even combine them. So I've got the crazy orange one underneath, and I've got this one, and now I'm going to mask this yellow out. And you see here is the one that we were doing earlier on. Now I'm removing areas from this yellow paint, and they are quite similar. Let's use the ugly one for now. Now this is too ugly. There you go. And let's say that, for example, the whole this whole thing, and you can combine those two, right? And you can create all sorts of combinations. Say, okay, this one is the yellow, distressed yellow paint, and this one, the other one, is more like this this other material that you've painted earlier, which should be some sort of rubber or something. Let's do that. Saturation. Let's get a little bit of saturation. Let's go a little bit towards the blues. Yeah. Something like that. Yeah, whatever. So this is it, and you can then play with these combinations and start to work with your design by just painting some masks. And it's the good thing about this is that it's very flexible. It's not destructive. And again, you've done all the hard work before, and you start harvesting it, right? Because it's all underneath. So now I've been pretty sloppy, so I'm starting to lose a lot of readability on this. But I just wanted to make sure that you get the point. So I'm going to paint this mask a bit more tighter. So there you go. So this is how you can use some textures. But let's continue and have more fun. See what we can do. So I'm going to do this other one, other way of doing multitasking. So drag and drop like that, and we have all these textures. Now let's see if it was more like more organic shape. So I've got this. So sorry if you're a bit. Going to see some fish here. I hope it's not too shocking. It's okay. It's not too bloody. So kids, if you're not at ease with dead fish, don't look. Stop watching. So press and hold. Put this guy here. So this has the advantage. Quick, hide it. Clipping mask. There we go. No, I created a mask. Hide it. There we go. So there you go. So now we have, because this fish is so detailed, so you see like the amount of detail is insane. I'm gonna have to probably paint over this, but it's pretty cool. It gives a cool idea. So now we have this dude is now more like an alien biomechanical cool thing, and we're gonna use the same technique, and we're gonna use say liquefy, and I'm gonna move things around. Liquefy. I'm painting on the mask, aren't I? I'm liquefying the mask. Oh yeah, this is going to be an interesting tip as well. So liquefy Let's go to liquify. There you go. And I'm not liquifying anything. Why am I not? Am I selected something? Liquify. No. So is it this thing? Because last time I wanted to do liquify and I had to hide the mask. Oh god. And oh, well that's weird. What's going on here? Anyway, let me delete that mask. Let's simplify to track this down. I did earlier. I must have done something wrong. Well, is it pressure? It's all good. Oh, I'm in reconstruct. Duh. So I was not liquifying anything. I was reconstructing something that I have not yet distorted. So obviously, there is always something, right? So I'm not it. There we go. Liquify. You? Struggling here. What's going on? Oh yeah, now that's why. So when you're on a mask, there you go. So I'm selecting the picture, and then I'm using liquify. Now it comes up. Good. Now we're all set. All normal. And now I'm going to remove reconstruct and use push. There we go. And now it does it now. So now we have. Okay. Oh no, it's not doing it. It's the. Oh yeah, it's a different kind of scenario. So the reason why this is going behind the shapes and it's still working, it's because of the clipping mask we have set earlier. But I'm going to show you something else. So if we were to have that not as a clipping mask, sorry, ugly fish, there you go. And if we were to select our contour, select, and if we were to use that as a normal mask, so I'm going to delete this mask. I've got my selection on, and so I'm going to do that again so it's clear. I select this silhouette guy, and I click select. So I've got a selection of this silhouette guy. Now I'm taking my ugly fish, dead fish texture, and now because of this selection, I create masks. So now it's got a mask, right? And it's not a clipping mask, so it's on its own. Let's hide all this, right? There you go. So this is just my drawing with a normal texture with a layer mask. So you might be in this situation, and now here you select. When you have a mask applied, you always have one of the two selected, and one is highlighted to show their relationship, right? So I want to liquify on the fish, right? So I'm gonna. Who would thought I would say something like that? I'm going to use liquify now, and watch what's going to happen. So you see here, I'm also liquifying the mask, which could be what you're after. But in this case, this is not very, very, very useful. This is not very helping us. So what you can do here, nothing to worry. You go there and you just deselect, by swapping right, you deselect the relationship between your mask and your original picture. And now, when you use any kind of distortion tool, or for that matter, liquify, let's go back to push, the mask is not affected, right? Which makes sense, right? It's not highlighted, that means you don't touch it. And this can be useful if you're in the situation that you're not using clipping masks, but you're using just normal masks. People often ask why do we have clipping masks and normal masks. It's not to make it confusing that you have both these options. It's, you have many scenarios where you are doing, for example, what we're going to be doing, where you can find it very useful to have both because of a sort of layer rig, or the way you have constructed your hierarchy of layers. And it's always good to have more options than not. If you can do different the same thing in different ways, it allows you to combine those two technologies. So there you go. So yeah, so this is about and it goes the other way around as well. So you can liquify only the mask but not the texture. Let's do that so that we are being thorough here. And yeah. same thing as in reconstruct. So yeah, so now I'm just working on the mask, not on the texture, so it goes both ways. All good. Right, so I don't need this mask for now. I was just wanted to show you this. Sorry, dead fish, back on, clipping mask. And yeah, let's reveal them, otherwise not gonna see much. There we go. So yeah, all that to say, completely different textures and completely different feel. Yeah, I mean, again, I'm using textures and you're like, oh, that's cool, and you're finding new ideas. And in the same way, you could mix, well, let's see what happened when I mix, let's delete this mask here, and let's do the clipping mask on this. So we have our yellow one. We're going to create a new mask for this one, which we're going to invert, and this is going to completely erase it. And we take a brush, which paints in white, which means that we are revealing that yellow layer. There we go. So now when I'm painting in white on this, I'm revealing this yellow thing. And same as before. I'm going to use something a bit stronger. Same as before, I can start combining those shapes, right? And you can start do this kind of really cool things. So we have, you know, it's both, you have a little bit of armor or metal elements or whatever, and this is pretty much, you know, this, you're looking for design here. You're finding, again, you would duplicate all these versions and you would lay them up on a page and you create all sorts of different cool things, right? Or maybe, you know, only his face is kind of alien and the rest is armor, right? And there you go. So let's do that. Right, and then, yeah, so you can create all sorts of cool versions, and then you go to your masks and you paint over, and you can use those layers as a very cool palette to paint over them. Right, and to smudge them and to create some cool things, so you lose a bit of that grain. And you do this kind of nice things, right? And then you can go at any time. You can go back to your highlights. If you think, well, actually, I'm going to refine that. It's fine. You can refine it, add some more highlights, or remove some, or change the way the light is behaving on your material. So you could duplicate this light layer for each and every material so that they behave differently. Let's see that maybe this is the eye. Actually, I forgot to place the eye in. But the good thing is, well, you do that for all your combinations, right? So you have added some highlights on all different layers. So that's pretty cool. This is a good way to use your mask, your clipping mask, and the textures. And also, we took advantage of painting directly with transparency, with this kind of brushes instead of with values. So that's useful. You could arguably paint on a white layer and paint in black, but then you would have to paint on a black layer and paint in white, and use all the values when you paint for this dark and light, and use different blending modes that you would have the same results. I just find it, you know, simpler to have just a layer without blending mode. It's all in normal, so it's less confusing. You know, I just know, okay, here I have some white, here I have some black, and because when you start piling up the layer, you want things to be quite simple. Right. So before we continue a little bit painting, here we go. And don't hesitate to ask questions. And Georgie is still around, and she's looking at all your comments, and she'll pick up if in everything I've done it too fast, or if the liquefy thing was confusing with this whole dead fish story. You can. I'm happy to go back and have a look. In the meantime, I'm gonna show you how, you know, happy accidents occurred. You know, well, yet another one. You can put it on top. So I've got all these kind of organic things. You have some marbles. Here we've got some sort of mattresses. But it's cool to create this kind of, actually we could use that to create this kind of cloth material, or for joints or stuff like that. All leather, that's cool. I want to use something with more ornaments. So we've got our yellow. What if this guy was actually quite ancient? And what if he's got a bit of an armor going on? So we mixed the genre. It's what if we were a bit in fantasy? So this is a lovely picture. We're going to get rid of this. So we're still in Liquify. There you go. So again, this is a texture photos from textures.com that I use. I've got a few credits over there too. I found their stuff super useful. I'm doing quite a bit of 3D as well, so it's quite useful what they have here. So okay, I'm gonna put that on top of the yellow. And oh, cool. Well, he automatically decided to be clipping mask. That's super useful. So yeah, there you go. So a cool use of both clipping mask and mask. So here, the clipping mask give me the advantage of having drawn that silhouette once, and it takes the contour immediately. But now I want to only display it in a few areas, because I'm going to distort that a little bit. Right, and we're going to use Liquify again. I'll keep mixing those two. I use Liquify again, just to make sure that this is actually, before Liquify, let's play around. Let's look at what we've got here. Yes? Yeah, so we're going to mix different genres. It could be like, imagine if this kind of creature was some sort of thing that was, ornamented, and it's yet a completely genre genre, and it's quite interesting. So that, okay, so here I'm using the picture to my advantage. I'm going to do Liquify it there. And it might feel like cheating, and if you think that it is, well, yeah, brilliant. But it's just basically having ideas. It's combining things, right? When you are drawing, or even when you're talking, when you're telling a story, you're combining those words together. You're combining different emotions. You're creating contrast with these combinations, and it can have a dramatic effect or a comedic effect. Every form of expression is combinations, and I think this is what we're doing here. We're trying to combine different things and see how it feels like. What's going on when we what if, and I love when a powerful tool like a computer can be a source of proposition. And here with this simple layer setup, we've done the hard work at the beginning of, I'll show you roughly, I've been a bit sloppy here and there for the sake of the demo, not spend too much time, but we've done the hard work of designing and stuff. And now it's just all fun with combining different propositions, right, in different things. And now we're going to a completely different style again. And I'm going to now create a mask. So this is the importance of having both mask and clipping mask. So here I'm using both. So the clipping mask keep me the silhouette safe, and the mask is going to invert it, so it's hiding everything. And I'm going to reveal this beautiful golden paint in a few areas. Let's say maybe some borders are going to be interesting to have, and yeah, it's going to do a lot of work for us. And when you are doing this kind of design work, it's not about a performance of traditional art or it. All it is about, it's about thinking. It's about, okay, what if we had a dude that was, looking like that and using this kind of material? And sometimes a concept art can be a little sloppy, as long as it's very readable, and as long as your intentions, in terms of designs are super clear, then it's going to be useful. Because in the end, this concept art is not what you're going to be seeing on screen, whether for a video game or for a movie. This is going to help the director and the people from the teams to decide, oh, okay, this could look like that. Oh, this is interesting. Wait a minute. Maybe this could be this, and so on and so forth. So they are concept designs are propositions. They are things that they are the visual representation of an idea, so that you don't have to rely on people's imagination to say, oh, what if we used a insectoid alien-like, which has also some form of classical ornaments. People are like, what are you talking about? But if you can put it together with in a simple picture, well, it's worth 1,000 words, and it can come across immediately. So yeah, you can think, well, this is not painting, this is cheating. It's not the point here. The point here is to sell an idea, to show an idea. So there you go. That was about this. I think it's an important thing to to pick your battles and to know what you're doing at what time. And again, this is just a tool. This kind of illustration is just a tool for thinking and for designing in an early stage of a process. This is not going to end up being a poster or a cover book or to be sold as is. It's just thinking material, right? Design. For the design. Right, so this is still very, very sloppy. What you can do at this stage, when you've done these kind of combinations, you're happy with those, and you've played a lot, and you've tried a lot of different things. Yeah, last time when I showed you on this one, I also added some sort of cool little decals that you can add as well. I'm going to show you there, for example. So this always works. It will always sell the shapes nicely. You add some nice details. Here, they're not decals, but they are ornaments. This is still quite sloppy. I'm going to do something about it. Yeah, once I'm all done with that, I go on top of this, I create a new layer, and just to paint. And another option I would like to see in Procreate is when because we are a white layer on top, if I want to pick the color, the color picker will always be on top of everything visible. Like, I don't think, maybe it exists, but I've not found it yet. Is the ability to choose where is the color picker picking from. So for example, I am at that level, which is underneath dark and light. And it would be great to find a little option to say, hey, color picker, just pick from where I am and below. And that would be useful, because here, if I'm painting, I'm over this gradient and I want that yellow. Well, I'm not getting exactly that yellow because I'm getting the white from my white layer. So I probably need to hide it, and so I can paint and start going and painting. And that's fine, but I think it would be a nice little addition. So you see what I'm doing there? I'm doing some little feature requests sneaking into the stream, because I know that George is listening. Here we go. I'm not going to do debugging stuff and things. They are quite rare now. Again, these bugs. But that, I think that would be a great little feature. And yeah, while we are at it, another cool feature is with quick shapes. At the moment, yeah, quick shapes. It's probably super hard, if not impossible to do. But if you do an S shape, it would be fantastic for quick shape to recognize them. I mean, it does a pretty good job right there. But I don't know if you can. You probably can't hear Georgie, but she agrees. So, yay. But you could have control points there. Maybe, I mean, maybe I don't know if it's possible or not. Maybe in terms of development, it's a golden grail that nobody has solved yet. I don't know. Or maybe it's too heavy. It would be too, or maybe you have to rewrite everything. But anyway, food for thoughts. That would be fantastic too. So yeah. So George is saying that curves that are difficult. And I can imagine, because you would have to probably, I don't know, sample all the brush strokes and guess that you have different angles going on. I mean, there's probably a whole lot of crazy math going on there. So as I go here, I'm painting over. Normally I would spend quite a bit of time. I'm going to just do it a little bit there. Maybe I'll finish this picture later on next week or during the weekend. But I think hopefully you're getting the gist of it, of this kind of technique thing. And yeah, so I think it can be very powerful. It can be very flexible, and you can create variations very quickly. But you can also surprise yourself with happy accidents and do some quick explorations for design. I think it's interesting to find ways of doing as little as possible heavy lifting, and to help all these awesome tools to your advantage when you do some design, you know. And again, pick your battles. Know what the goal. Go about with your paintings and drawing with a goal. It's going to help you a lot to ask the right questions and to avoid wasting time and to get better help as well when you're asking questions. So yeah, so I think, I mean, I'm happy to continue painting live, but what do you think, Georgie? Should we continue a bit more, or do you want? Should we do a bit of Q&A? See if there is any questions. So you can't hear Georgie, but yeah. So I'm gonna continue painting and drawing a little bit there, loosely a little bit, and I'm gonna do that for a few minutes, and ask away any kind of question. Let's do a little Q&A now. Georgie is around to pick all your questions in the stream, in the chat. So yeah, I'm gonna just paint. Do the Yeah, so that's very much what I'm doing. I do these kind of designs and drawings before I start sculpting. Sculpting, more advanced, because I find that I love sculpting and I love everything 3D as well. And I find that Procreate has a great place in the workflow, in my workflow. Again, as I'm showing now, in the early stage of a design piece, because when you start in 3D, it can get quickly quite complicated, and I think it's very useful to have a kind of a strong idea of where you're going before you get started, because it's quite involved in 3D. So when I'm using ZBrush or ZBrush, I like to have a little sketch beforehand, so I know roughly. You see here, we've defined some volumes, and we can. I can see roughly what they are in space, right? So because we've done that work, I know. Oh wait, so if I start with ZBrush, I'm going to start for the helmet with maybe a sphere, and maybe I'm going to push it or cut it that way, right? So now I know that I've got this part of the helmet, and here I'm going to start with the cylinder that I'm going to modify to do this kind of antenna bits, right? And that, for example, maybe I'm gonna use a slice of a sphere here to do that bit there, and here I'm gonna use more cylinders with rounded edges that I place. And you quickly in ZBrush block in your shapes very roughly, it's the same as the drawing we've made, right? So you do first a large block in. But at least you can start with a strategy because you have done a drawing beforehand. So instead of researching, doing that research job in 3D, which can be a bit more expensive in time, I find it much faster, because in 20 minutes, in 20 or 30 minutes, let's group all these color things. Because that's starting to become quite a pile here. In 20 or 30 minutes, there we go. Yeah, we were around there quite quickly, and even at this stage, if you know that you're going to play with textures in 3D and stuff, or if you want to look for textures and design things later on, you could even start with that, and you would still have this information here. Let me go back to this layer. You will still have this information here, right? So in terms of strategy, this is super useful to have a rough sketch, and you could have all this information about how you're going to be, planning your 3D sculpt, and you can have that in as little as 20 minutes. You can have your basic idea, you know where you're going, and you're going to be much more efficient in 3D, because the 3D tasks can become quite daunting and quite complex, and anything that could help to breaking them down in smaller, simpler, manageable tasks is going to be helpful. So yeah, that was a very long answer to say yes, I do, and I use ZBrush. But yeah, it's a very good question. This is very much where it sits in the workflow. I'm painting a little bit there, because this. Yeah, I think analytical drawing would be the key to that. So what is analytical drawing? Is to know what you draw. So if you remember at the very early stage of this piece, we knew what we were doing in terms of volumes. So if you want to draw, again, let's use this head piece. If you want to draw the top bit of the helmet, or the head, or whatever this thing is, right? And let's say we know that roughly it's a portion of a sphere, right? And it's got a cut in it, and it's got a portion of another sphere. So if you know how to light a sphere, you will know how to light this shape. So you can look at a lot of tutorials about basic lighting, and you'll find out that most of them start with lighting basic shape. So practice lighting a cylinder, practice lighting a sphere, practice lighting a cube, and start with a form of plaster lighting without reflections, right? So it's just overall lighting. So again, I know roughly with this gradient tool that you're going to have, if the light comes from above there and a bit behind, you're going to have a light there. And then you can place some core shadows. I know that some materials, depending on your lighting, will have a core shadow because you have probably another lighting coming from there. So you'll have a core shadow in the middle here, right? And right there you start to pick up a reading on the light, right? So there you go. And here you have your backlighting thing. So lighting, the key about lighting is like the key advice about lighting is the same as about drawing, is do it a lot, and practice it a lot, and go outside as well and look at things with an analytical eye. So you look at a car and try to see, okay, what do I have here? What are the simple volumes? And then later on in your training, you'll find out, okay, so why is the windshield is reflecting differently than the metal bits, that the bonnet or something? And you'll find also more questions. Why does metallized paint, doesn't look like the same as a normal paint on metal. What's going on there? You know, all these kind of things. You can try to look outside in nature every day, all the time, trying to look at the world with a fresh eye. If you look at a car, don't see a car, try to see the shapes and try to see where are the shadows. And it's very interesting to not take the everyday life things that we see for granted, but to try to understand them as volumes that are reflecting light, reverberating light, picking up shadows, and so on and so forth. Now, another way I've learned a lot about light is, again, I'm doing a lot of 3D. I'm a 2D. I forgot to present myself. I'm a 2D 3D artist, and so I do a lot of 3D as well. And well, pretty much when you position a light in your 3D scene, it helps you to see how the shadows are behaving. So you're constantly building up a visual reference and reflexes, and your brain is picking up about, oh, so this is what's going on when this is there. And then, for example, I had to do some product design and product rendering, so I had to create a light setup for a car to make it as realistic as possible. And this is no easy task to make it look realistic and yet, you know, a desirable product without all the unnecessary reflection bits. And when you want to have a rim light, for example, like a rim light, let's put it on the white layer, a rim light, you want to have this kind of, that's very strong. You know, this kind of light that is really creating this kind of defining line. Well, it's very interesting to see how to get there and where do you have to position your light to get there. So again, using 3D and 3D software also helps you a lot understanding and analyzing how light does work. So yeah, it's no easy task, and it's very daunting, and like everything complex and daunting, it takes some time, and it's going to be very helpful to break it into manageable pieces. So go out there, find some tutorials where you start to, you know, a basic sphere and then a basic cylinder, and then you'll see that body parts and like anything else and like everything else are made out of these basic shapes. And thinking in terms of basic shapes is going to help you a lot in terms of drawing, not only lighting, in terms of drawing, because you're going to start your drawing or at least picture what you're about to do in terms of these big shapes. And when you're going to get into perspective and to placing your drawing in on your stage or wherever it is in your drawing, on your painting, then using this kind of knowledge of basic forms is going to be pretty useful. Alright, so now I'm using this kind of brush shape, but when I'm using it in a very small way, you can do these very nice little line cuts. So I mean, if you've noticed, I've used only these two brushes. Pretty much only. I've used only this one. I can use that one actually. It's a bit sharper. I've hardly used that. Maybe a little bit at the beginning. I found it a bit easier to draw. But yeah, it's nothing too fancy. You can, at this stage, when you use textures, yeah, something we've not covered. You can use all these great brushes that you have at your disposal. Let's go, for example, to industrial, and let's pick up some rust and decay. And you're going to get to the same point where we were saying, well, we need to be mindful about the level of detail of everything. So these brushes are very. Wait, what layer am I at? Ooh, I'm on the light layer. I've started to pollute it. It's fine. So yeah, you can use that to your heart's content as well. And but then you see that the level of detail is now getting pretty sharp. So I would have to make sure that the whole of the picture get that kind of level of detail. And this is actually working pretty nicely. So you can have a play with different brushes, and let's look at maybe this heavy metal. See what that does. I probably don't use them often enough. Yeah. So I mean, this is this was a little bit sloppy and everything, and it's not final, but hopefully it has given you a good idea of a workflow to use to create quick design and to explore ideas and to combine shapes and to try a lot of different things, to have, you know, to harvest the hard work that you do in a smart way, so that you can then just have fun. And you know, here I could start paying for hours and hours in just do this guy, and it probably wouldn't be needed. So I should focus more on, okay, where is sloppy, what is not readable, you know, what is getting in the way of selling the shape. So this is sloppy, and here we don't understand these ornaments quite enough. So you know, I would go and clean this up and make some design decisions. But hopefully, you know, you've learned something interesting, and it was hopefully useful to see this kind of drawing where we're basically not putting ourselves under pressure, where it's fine to try a lot of things that doesn't work, because, well, that's exactly what it is for. It's just a thinking process, and with all this kind of design stuff, it's fine. It's basically in the entertainment environment, or in the movie environment, only 10%, 5% of the stuff is chosen, and you have a huge amount of stuff that is recycled and shared between different artists. And oh, can you have a go at this and try that, and you really have to not be precious about what you're doing, and really see it as a function. Like, you know, this great saying, design is function, and concept art is design. And what is this? And so it is functional. It is. I'd argue it's more like a craft. Often think myself more as a craftsman than an artist, really. You see. So where is this thing? Got a thing going on here. So yeah, So I think I'm pretty much done here. We can. I mean, I could continue painting for ages. I might continue, and we'll post it later, a more finished version. But hopefully that was clear enough for you guys to get you know, a bit of a glimpse in this kind of design sketches, right? So I think, yeah, I'm going to continue and paint that later on, and maybe we'll post it back on the story or on the Procreate account, and we are going to probably what we're going to do now is, like, I'm going to jump on the Instagram story later on today of the official Procreate account, and you can go and post your questions there. I'm going to create a story with the question widget, and you can post all your questions in there, and I'll do my best to answer as many as I can. So there you go. I think this is pretty much it for this stream. Thank you for joining us, everybody. Thanks for having me, Georgie. Thanks. It's an honor. I'm super happy to be there, and thanks to the whole Procreate team for all this good stuff. So So yeah, I'll see you guys later. Now I'm gonna stop this stream, and I see you guys on the other side on Instagram with this story widget that I'm going to put up really soon. So thanks everybody, and I'll see you next time.